Hi everyone, we're back in the studio with another great artist today. Here's Beck, the musical director for Rob Thomas. Thanks so much for coming.
My pleasure.
It's great to have you.
Thank you.
We were lucky to get some video from you earlier, and now we just want to ask you a couple of questions.
Sure.
So you play a wide variety of instruments. You're not just a keyboardist.
Correct.
Which instrument speaks the most to you?
Well, I started on piano as a young kid, and so, I mean, that's the first thing that I gravitated towards, and so, you know, I've been with that the longest. But when I became a little older, I took on guitar, and that sort of discovered that on my own. And so actually, you know, because of that, really like finding that on my own as a teen who like discovered rock and roll, the guitar really speaks to me more, and it's more of what I do today, but although I do a lot of keyboards as well, almost as much, but I do mostly guitar.
Okay, so piano's your first love.
It's sort of the first love, but like, you know, guitar is really where I've landed, you know, as an adult. But, you know, a lot of what I do is both. So I do a lot of keyboard stuff as well.
When you do play keyboard, you play the Chronos.
Absolutely.
What is it about the Chronos that sets it apart from other synths?
Well, the first of all, I mean, just the sounds are amazing. You know, I was, like many other people, had the Triton when that was like the go-to keyboard, and you know, at that time those were like state-of-the-art sounds, and I've just stayed with the company ever since then because it's always state-of-the-art. I also like the programmability of it. It's really versatile. Like, I can do so much with it. I mean, I can do a whole show, I can do a whole arena tour, and I can put everything within the keyboard. I can do all my samples, I can load in all the stems from the record that I need to trigger. I can do all my splits and layers, obviously, and I even trigger things with some of the foot pedals that can be hooked up so that I'm triggering certain samples when I'm playing guitar, even. So I can actually be essentially playing some keyboard lines when I'm playing guitar with some of the foot pedals. So I love it. I have two, actually. I keep one stacked on top of the other. I have a non-weighted 61 note on top, and then I have the weighted 88 note on the bottom, and it's everything I need.
You're the second artist we interviewed this week that said that, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me.
Yeah. It's a good setup, you know?
Absolutely.
And you've worked with a ton of great artists, Lisa Loeb, Rod Stewart, Matchbox 20. How did you get your start in music?
Well, both my parents are professional musicians. So, you know, for me, it just was, you learn to walk, you learn to talk, and you learn to play an instrument, you know. I mean, it wasn't sort of like, it wasn't laid out for me that I was going to pursue music as a career, but it was just such a big part of my upbringing, and it just was, you know, in the house all the time, and I got to see my parents do it, and so it just was a logical extension of me. So when I started to think about what I wanted to do as a living, that was really a big thing to consider. I didn't always want to do it, but ultimately it was the strongest pull for me. So yeah, I went into it head first, just, you know, never looked back.
Yeah. Yeah. Good for you.
Thank you.
So you were the keyboardist for Matchbox 20, and then you toured with Rob Thomas solo, and you became his musical director. Correct. What is your role to be the MD? What is the day-to-day?
Sort of like being, you know, a liaison of sorts, because, you know, Rob isn't always able to be there because he's doing a lot of other things, and so, you know, he's entrusted me to have the, you know, have his back, essentially, you know, with the upkeep of the rest of the band, making sure that everyone's playing the right parts and the right sounds. We can even work up arrangements of new things before he is there, so that we can, you know, get the work started before he even gets there. You know, ultimately, you know, when he started this solo part of his career, he sort of tapped me on the shoulder during a Matchbox tour and said, "Hey, I'm going to start a solo thing. Would you help me put this band together?" So, you know, originally I was instrumental in actually getting some of the players into the band, and I continue to do that and make sure that when we need somebody, I have someone in place who's the right fit. Okay. And yeah, and, you know, everything and beyond, you know, almost anything it can be. Like, you know, sometimes Rob and I will write together. Sometimes he'll call me to record with him. It's basically just being his right-hand man, his right-hand musical man.
No.
in a sense.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
Now, next week, you're hitting a different kind of stage that you're normally used to. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I live in New York City, and a lot of some of the best work that you can do in New York City is Broadway work. Any New York musician will tell you that. And I've been here for a long time, and so I do, when I'm not playing with Rob and Matchbox and other artists, I'm doing a lot of Broadway work. And so I'm starting a new show as guitarist called Amelie. It's based on a French movie that you might recall. Yeah. And so that starts next week, so I'll be doing that up until I'm needed again with Matchbox or Rob.
Okay,
I'll
hopefully
be doing that.
soon.
Yes, hopefully soon.
Is this your first Broadway show?
Not my first. I've been in New York a long time, like I said, and I've always subbed on shows as a sub. Like when the guitar player or keyboardist wasn't available, they would call me. But now I've been here enough, and I've met enough people, and I've had enough experience that I've done a lot of my own shows. So most notably, I played guitar for Spider-Man, which was the Bono and Edge wrote the music for. And then I did the Carole King musical called Beautiful. And then after that, I did the Sting musical called The Last Ship. So I get a lot of calls for the sort of rock, pop musicals because of what I've done with bands and stuff.
That's awesome. A little bit of a different world,
Yeah.
different aspect of the music world.
Yeah, although those two worlds are starting to like collide more, as like rock stars age, there's like their fan base goes into like a different, they're not always going to the arenas to see them. They're going to theaters, so like you see musicals from Bono and Edge and Sting and now Sarah Bareilles, and there's a lot more. Sheryl Crow's written one has one in the works, and there's so many.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, good luck. Break a leg.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for coming today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.